A splendid evening at HT viewers. Welcome to Equity News and Equity Access, your aerial perspective of stock market developments and of developments in the Zimbabwean economy. Thank you for joining us as we broadcast live from our Hampton studios. I'm Ibn Mabunda. Let's get started. To support statutory instrument 142, which reintroduced the Zimbabwean dollar, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has issued an exchange control circular. Key to the document are new regulations for bureau charges, forex guidelines for international travelers, as well as NGO forex funds movements. Of interest is a cap for travelers, which states that if one wants to travel, they are allowed to access just $300 for a maximum of 7 days. That, of course, would be for those traveling on holiday. And then for business travelers, there is a cap of $400 per day with a ceiling of $10,000 per year. This, of course, would be the document, and you'd find that on point 3.52 of that particular document. This, of course, is the one that talks about the business travelers. The one beneath here at $300 if you're traveling for holiday, be it Dubai or you're traveling to Zanzibar on holiday. Also in the document is the fact that if you are working for an NGO and you are used to receiving your payments in US dollars, that will no longer be the case. You will receive payment from the NGO into your bank account, but what would then happen is for you to access the funding, it would then be converted at the interbank rate into the local currency. As we make progress, as electricity and power shortages persist, government has set up a 7-member interministerial team to deliberate on matters pertaining to the nation's fuel and power supplies. This was expressed by the Minister of Information and Publicity, Honorable Monica Mchanga, during a post-cabinet media briefing held in the capital this morning. From the cabinet briefing, 14 million liters of fuel have been fed into the national system to address the prevailing fuel shortages. Minister Mchanga also indicated that the Minister of Energy and Power Development, Advocate Fortune Chelsea, is in South Africa to negotiate with Eskom on issues to do with power supplies to ZESA. Let's just have a look at the visuals from that post-cabinet briefing.
Cabinet also was briefed on the fuel and energy supply situation in the country by the Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Services as the Acting Minister of Energy and Power Development. The Minister informed Cabinet that a total of 40 million litres of the combined fuel product is currently being pumped into the country. On the power front, it was reported that the Minister of Energy and Power Development is currently in South Africa for electricity supply negotiations with Eskom. The nation will be apprised of the outcome of the negotiations at an appropriate time. In the meantime, Cabinet resolved to set up an interministerial committee to work closely with the Minister of Energy and Power Development in order to facilitate a collective approach in the resolution of the prevailing power and energy supply challenges which we have in our country. It is critical that at this point we put our heads together, and this is why the Cabinet resolved to come up with a task force, interministerial committee. And for your information, the committee, which will be chaired by the Minister of Energy and Power Development, Honorable Chelsea, includes the following ministers: Minister of Industry and Commerce, Minister of Finance and Economic Development, Minister of Environment, Tourism and Hospitality Industry, Minister of Lands, Agriculture, Water, Climate and Rural Resettlement, Minister of Mines and Mining Development, Minister of Information, Communication Technology, Postal and Courier Services, Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services. Those are the members of that interministerial committee, which will be working closely with the Minister of Energy and Power Development. The interministerial committee will serve as a platform through which players in the critical sectors of the economy can channel their proposals and contributions towards the resolution of the prevailing energy and power supply challenges for consideration by the ministry and the Zimbabwe Power Company.
In bracket, tiles manufacturer FENG bemoans the effects of power shortages on its production. According to a statement issued by the management, which says our operations have been hard hit by the rolling power cuts which have damaged machinery and increased the cost of production. FENG requires 18,000 liters of diesel per day to power their plants at a cost of 100,000 Zimbabwean dollars. It has claimed that it lost about $1.3 million after 250,000 square meters of tiles were damaged while the production process was ongoing due to electricity cuts. The Chinese-owned company has also lost several pieces of equipment, especially electric motors, which have been damaged by the rolling power cuts. Further, FENG production costs have been pushed up as it requires over 100,000 to buy 18,000 liters of fuel per day. As economic woes continue to mount, CBZ lays off a good 100 of its labor force. CBZ is the country's largest bank by value of deposits. This concludes our evening news bulletin. Up next is a look at the news and the news review. Please stay with us.
Climbing to the top takes more than just hard work and smart choices. It's the passion that drives you from within, the endurance to keep going through difficult times, and having a very clear vision of how to succeed. That's what we strive for at CBZ. We're a diversified and innovative listed financial services group in Zimbabwe with a complete range of activities including banking, short and long-term insurance, asset management, and property investments. CBZ has been a pinnacle for stability in the economic landscape of Zimbabwe, stemming from our deep-rooted values, our excellent customer service delivery, and our corporate vision to strive for excellence as a global competitor. Our continuous investment in research and development will cement our promise to provide customer convenience utilizing state-of-the-art technology. Relationships are at the core of what we do. We understand, however, that strong, long-lasting partnerships are not built overnight. With over 3 decades of wealth management, we have come to understand our clients and their specific investment requirements. Our unique mix of skills ensures that investment opportunities are examined from all perspectives. The balancing rocks of Zimbabwe have weathered the elements for thousands of years and stood the test of time, like majestic reminders of the fine balance of nature. They challenge our perception of what is possible and what endures. Just as CBZ has weathered the economic storms and remained steadfast throughout the turbulence of unsettled economies. Achieving the impossible through resilience and stability, we balance the elements of hard work, dedication, and experience, making us your ideal partner for success. Climbing to the top takes more than just hard work and smart choices. It's the passion that drives you from within, the endurance to keep going through difficult times, and having a very clear vision of how to succeed. That's what we strive for at CBZ. We're a diversified and innovative listed financial services group in Zimbabwe with a complete range of activities including banking, short and long-term insurance, asset management, and property investments. CBZ has been a pinnacle for stability in the economic landscape of Zimbabwe, stemming from our deep-rooted values, our excellent customer service delivery, and our corporate vision to strive for excellence as a global competitor. Our continuous investment in research and development will cement our promise to provide customer convenience utilizing state-of-the-art technology. Relationships are at the core of what we do.
Kaduo Tinashe, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eben. Good evening.
Thank you. Now, Tinashe, interesting development as we see the RBZ issuing a documentation, an exchange control circular, number 6 of 2019. What is the significance of this particular document, given the fact that it has said several things about exchange controls? It has also made mention of certain caps where traveling internationally is concerned, and also how there's been also a mention of how bureaus now need to function. Would you want to shed more light where this subject is concerned?
Yeah, Ibn, this is actually an exchange control circular that has been issued out by the central bank to buttress, the SI 142. So if you look at the interventions or what the measures that are being actually proclaimed by this circular, they are actually measures targeting to buttress or to implement the SI 142. Most of those measures, they are actually speaking to, or they are actually speaking towards making, the local currency actually the sole legal tender for all domestic transactions. So if you look at some of those measures, especially the one to do with payment of salaries by NGOs and embassies to their employees, even on their own discretion, or the circular is saying on the event that those NGOs even have paid their employees in US dollars, the employee, when he wants now to transact in this domestic economy, he has to convert that amount into local currency, then he transacts using that local currency. So in essence, the RBZ is saying that no any other currency is now is being required or will be required to meet or to settle domestic transactions. It's now only the Zimbabwean dollar or the RTGS dollar. That's the legal tender. Then of interest as well is the aspect where it speaks on the thresholds that it has put on the amounts that you can take out when you travel for either business or leisure traveling. The RBZ is saying that if it's business travel, the maximum amount that you can keep, it's an equivalent of your 400 US dollars per day with maximum of 7 days per trip. Which means in essence that if you have a business meeting out there, what you have to take out with you as your daily allowance per trip, the maximum amount is just if you say your 400 times 7, it gives you about 2,800. So it's about an equivalent of 2,800 US dollars. And of interest there is a ceiling of 10,000 per year, implying that those people who might want to use that window to launder out, or what I may say, to externalize cash, it's not feasible, because if you say 2.8 into 10, it gives something about an equivalent of less than 3 trips. So it means that the maximum you can do per year, it's 3 trips where you will be staying outside for an equivalent of 7 days. So I think it's positive, especially in this economy, in light of people that were using the US dollar cash to externalize. They were using that cash for money laundering activities. So I think this is actually a positive intervention which can actually help to mobilize more and more US dollars to be traded in the formal market. Then you have seen also even the interventions through this circular, especially to productive sectors, in particular the chrome mining sector. You find that the chrome mining sector is actually dominated by small scale players and maybe 1 or 2 large scale players. So the circular is saying that in the event that the large scale player wants to pay those small scale players in US dollars, it can pay them using the domestic nostro FCA accounts. The large scale player can actually make transfers into those small scale players nostro accounts. So in essence, the circular is actually saying that small scale players are now they should open nostro FCA accounts which will be used for that purposes. But that large scale player now, yes, or actually he has to open another account, which is called an FCA transitory account, which will be used for that purposes of paying out Chrome deliveries by those small scale players. So I think this actually enhances or makes it more. It actually enhances efficiency and the flow of payments from small scale from large scale players to small scale players. But the there is now when the small scale player now wants to utilize that foreign currency which has been transferred to that Nostro FCA accounts, that small scale player has to approach a bureau de change or even a bank, then the amount will be converted to local currency. So in essence, the RBZ is saying no more transactions in US dollars. All domestic transactions in the economy will be done in local currency. So in essence is you will be seeing your US dollars in your account, you see them, but you can't touch them.
Interesting. But Tinashe, I was expecting a documentation from the RBZ that would stipulate that all trades will now be transparent, because there have been concerns across the board advocating for the RBZ to be more transparent in terms of the trades, the volumes, as well as the values that actually take place on a daily basis in a bid to boost confidence and also allow for efficiency where the market is concerned. But this, of course, one or two things could be taken from it, but is this what Zimbabwe needs, or Zimbabwe needs to see transparency at this point?
But if you look even at this circular, there are some statements where the central bank is saying for some high value transactions the bureau de change is required even to take details, including the ID of the person
taking details
the change is actually transacted with.
That's taking details, but I mean, yes. In terms of, look, we could have a website, an RBZ site or a page that actually indicates and stipulates the volumes and volumes on a daily basis so as to increase transparency and also to allow more players to play on the market. Because look, across the board, we are seeing a lot of side deals taking place. The power market is still thriving. Remember when the SI 142 was launched, for a few days, we saw the power market actually drowning as there was increased play on the interbank market system, because for a split second there was what seemed to be confidence on that market. But that is not what we're actually seeing now. We're seeing the parallel market coming back to life and without perhaps other incentives or other measures by the central bank, things may stay as they are.
I would like to believe that if you look at the advent of all these measures, I think we are actually in the second month since the formal reintroduction of the domestic currency. So if you look at how the events are playing out, I think the RBZ will be able to improve over time in terms of the reporting side when transparency and accountability is concerned, as far as that transparency is concerned. But in terms of all those things, as much as we would want transparency, much of it is sometimes you have to benchmark ourselves with global standards. I'm yet to see a central bank which actually where you can get that information freely or easily. If you look at even the South African Reserve Bank, you look at Bank of Zambia, and even if you look at the Fed Reserve, I don't think you might see that information readily available on a daily basis.
Yes,
there might be a certain time, like maybe a month or so. So I think such volumes or even those trades, I think we might be able to see them in those reports that are published by the RBZ, on a weekly or on a monthly or a quarterly basis. I think it's an area where I hope and believe we would see improvement as far as
desperate times calling for desperate measures. Anyway, let's talk about the development from Cabinet as of yesterday, issued then today or expanded on today in a post-Cabinet media briefing. Government has set up a 7-member interministerial team to deliberate on power issues. What is the importance of this particular move? I mean, is it really a matter of shifting the individuals who are responsible for power? I mean, we recently fired or strategically reassigned the former minister Joram Gumbo from the Ministry of Energy and Power Development. Now there's Advocate Fortune Chassis, and now it seems as though we're saying Advocate Fortune Chassis has failed. So now we are beefing up and we are ensuring that he's got all the support across the board. What's actually happening?
We actually even in very difficult times, and you are seeing these
7 ministers.
These are desperate measures that are being implemented by the government. You see, if you look at, we have actually a fully fledged Ministry of Energy
and Power Development,
which has got
a deputy minister,
PEMSEC, with in-house
directors,
with in-house economists.
We also have a ZESA board.
Yes. Then we also have, from there you look at the executive level, we have, those presidential, the PAC. Then we now have, this committee also looking into the issues, to do with
the same issue.
But if you look at the issues in the power or in the energy industry, I don't think it's something that we should take, several months or years deliberating or negotiating over it. The issues, they are very simple and they are straightforward. We owe our suppliers, we have a debt that we have, and the debt has to be paid. Or if you can't pay, at least you have to engage and renegotiate in terms of certain terms. So I think it needs, certain political will where, an authority or even executive of those, responsible institutions, they can go there and discuss, with your creditors for a way out. Then we have seen the issues also to do with these challenges. It's those years of under-investment in electricity. If you look at over the years, there is not much that has been done in major infrastructure projects, especially towards revamping or boosting our productive capacity in the power generation sector. You look at the expansion projects that were done at Kariba, you look at those projects that are being done at Wange. Those are the projects, just to resuscitate or to revamp, but there is nothing much that has been done for new capacity. New capacity, it has, remained, a sky in the pie. You look at the Batoka project, it has been taken, so long. We started, hearing it about it since 2000, and up to now, it's still, in the initial stages of development. The only thing that has happened, it was, to do much with the private sector, where we have seen, your Wand Hydro and even the likes of Old Mutual, entering, that sector, offering, those, off-grid or mini-grid solutions. But in terms of large scale, we haven't seen much. Actually, other, supporting substations, the likes of Umnyati and the other, thermal power stations that have been, located all over those cities or all over those major cities in the country. Actually, they are not operating at all because of serious challenges and, dilapidated equipment, as well as issues to do with NRZ and also issues to do with coal production at Wange. So you see, the problem that we have is actually much to do with under-investment. As long as we continue relying on imports and we don't have enough resources to pay for those imports. But
last year we had enough power, Tinashe. And the stats are very clear. 2017 we import a good 16 million. 2018 we import a good 17 million per month. And now in 2019, why are we importing 79% less of that, just $3 million?
Sometimes you look at even if you don't produce much, sometimes you can continue spending or importing, but not adequately paying for what you have, what you have consumed. So I would, tend to believe that, even all those years that we had, adequate electricity, maybe we are not paying, that electricity in full. That's where we have seen a debt accumulation where it's being, are reported to have, approaching the 100 million mark, which is a worry.
Okay. I would need to go through the stats there for clarity. I think on one of the shows we'll have to go through the date and explain the teensy-winsies of that particular date. But just lastly, before we close this segment of the show, CBZ laying off a good 100 employees with reports that we could actually see the number increase from that. What is your perspective? What is happening there?
Desperate times calls for desperate measures. And sometimes, when austerity has been implemented, even at household level or at company level, you also tend to implement austerity measures as well. So you are seeing, companies or even, your households, they are actually, trying to replicate what's happening in the government. Actually, the government, it's actually, set up a certain standard when it actually, announced that it is, retrenched or had gotten rid of ghost workers and some of those employees that were actually, replicating some of the duties that were being undertaken by others. So you see, CBZ, which is the country's, largest bank by asset sheet, is actually, a worry there where you see the number one employer in the banking sector taking such, a drastic measure. So I think it's not, an issue of CBZ alone. There are so many companies, in that, same situation. You look at this new entrant, that company which is doing, is it tiles in Norton?
Sunny FENG.
Yeah, it reported actually that it's facing, increased operational costs because of these power outages and all those and this, unsustainable currency depreciation. So with time, when you are faced with all those escalating costs in a tight operating environment, the only variable that you can control as a company are your costs, and the only variable that you can control very much is, your number of employees and the labor time that you are operating in. So cutting that, I think it's something, towards, having, a leaner cost structure and trying, to safeguard both margins and to stay in business. As long as you continue paying more in an environment where business is tight, I think on a balance, you end up, in the red. So I think what CBZ is doing and other companies are doing is the broader, impact of austerity and the recession that we are in as an economy. Actually, I might say a recession, it's actually a deeper one. It's an economic, stagflation, which we are in. A period of high inflation, a period of high unemployment, a period of, slowing economic growth. Those are the worries that we are seeing in the economy. And the retrenchment and the deindustrialization, this is, the correct or the probable outcome of that, recession and economic stagflation.
Interesting. Let's see how the story develops. The minister says on the 31st of July, there's an interim budget which is meant to lessen the burden on the taxpayers, try and perhaps stimulate the economy towards growth. But let's see the package that he has in store for us.
Some of those things that I'm expecting in the interim budget.
Sure.
I'm actually expecting to see the minister revising downwards the 2%, transfer tax, maybe actually removing it in total. But you see, why I'm much concerned with that 2% tax is the 2% tax is actually an extra burden to the consumers and also an extra cost to businesses as well. It's actually increasing, the cost of doing business, and it's also fueling or is actually a catalyst to this retarding economic growth. So for me, I believe that the minister right now, when you are faced with economic recession and high inflation there, the minister should make, a decision to say which variable should he focus on. Should he focus on tackling inflation, to me, which is more of a monetary thing, which should be left in the hands of the RBZ, or focus more on economic growth? So as fiscal authorities, I think his focus right now should be more of more towards on focusing on economic growth. So I believe maybe I would want to see an interim budget that's a bit more expansionary and a bit more, and a bit more optimistic in terms of growth and growth targets.
Would need to have a full-scale debate on that particular subject. In fact, we'll have a session where we just talk about what to expect in the budget, as well as to discuss the budget soon after it would have been released by the minister. Thank you, Tinashe, for the perspectives. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Up next is a look at the stock markets in Markets Daily with Anesu. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Markets Daily on Equity Access. My name is Anesu Chimbumu and I am your host for the markets today. Now, as we move into the markets, midweek session has come off today as investors continue to try and find a much more solid direction as to which to go in the current situation. Just give us a couple of minutes and we'll be right back. We have just faced a technical challenge. Apologies for that short blackout, but as I was saying, investors seem to keep on struggling to find some direction as to how to move ever since the promulgation of SI 142. Now, the RBZ did release a new exchange control directive. Now, I've just mentioned this because one of the key factors that has been driving a lot of investors towards the stock market was much to do with how the interbank market has been performing as of late, before the SI 142, even prior. Now the interbank has had its some sort of controls that we are suspecting at the current moment because of the show of numbers in terms of how things have been moving. But before I just go into the interbank market, let's just have a look at how the stock market really performed today. Industrials was down 0.2%, while the mining's index did lit up 8.83% after having gained about 5% in the prior session. Now today it did come off mainly because of realism losses that were experienced within that index. Now the mining's index has two counters that are currently active on the stock market. It has 4 listed counters that are there. 2 other counters besides realism and Bindura Nickel would be your FAL Gold and your Wangi Colliery, but these but FAL Gold and Wangi Colliery are currently suspended, leaving 2 counters to be a much more determining factor as to how that index moves. Top 10 index was down 0.26% for it to settle at 181.56 points, while industrials index and the all share index settled at 638.48 points and 191.23 points. Now both these all of these movements to date then did register for a negative week to date percentages today, with the all share index down 0.13%, while the top 10 index is down 0.91%. Now within our top 10 index counters, we've got about 2 counters that were in the positive direction. Notably would be your BAT, which did add about 1.39%, while Econet added 0.61% for it to still steer clear of a week-to-date positive gain of 0.96%. Moving on to our weekly trends there, the top 10 index is now is down 1.05% as of last Tuesday, while the mining's index is down 4.25% and the all share index 0.26%. Now for our risers and fallers, we had about a number 24 counters that exchanged hands. 9 traded as laggards and 4 were risers. Now of those 9, leading counter that did come off, the worst performing counter that did come off largely today was Realism, that lit up 13.04% for it to settle at 200 cents, while Padenga and OK did trail that, coming off 1.4% and 0.99%. Cassava Smart Tech came off 0.86% and 0.47% for Fidelity, as they are still going through a couple of restructuring measures for them to continue financing their projects and trying to find their way out of some of these projects and finishing them. Now BAT did add 1.39%, Econet 0.61%, and not much to do with the risers. Ariston and PPC then did curve that set of risers there today. Now parallel market has settled at 10.2 today, with some traders going up as high as 10.4, but we have definitely breached the 10 mark again since the 142 instrument, where also the old mutual implied rate is at 10.49, which pretty much is very much close to the reflection of how the parallel market has been performing. Now the interbank rate has continued on a very slow pace, weakening by another 0.15% today, for it to settle at 8.91. Now, like I did mention earlier on, at the beginning of my session, I did mention that there seem to have been some controls within that market. You'll realize that government keeps on speaking about having improved forex receipts and exports being pretty much better, which should translate into us having a much more healthier foreign currency balance. But it seems as if our bid prices are not moving as fast as the ask price. Now, what that basically means is that your supply, your demand is much higher than the supply, which then translates into us then suggesting or that there may be some sort of a control in that within that aspect, as this trend is pretty much very much closely related to how that interbank market rate has been performing or reacting before the SI 142. Now, when SI 142 was then published, a couple of banks did have the freedom to then almost match what the parallel market was doing. At some point, the parallel market was actually giving much less premiums than some banks were, which were trading around about as high as about nine thereabout, where when the parallel market was just about a little bit over that performance there. Now that trend has now changed. It seems as if the parallel market is now starting to move further away from the trend that the interbank has been taking. Now with the new directive in terms of the exchange controls, it seems as if there are more measures that have been put in by the RBZ as to try and restrict the movement of US dollars in hard cash amongst individuals, SMEs, and other businesses, as they have brought in some new measures, which would be that even if you do receive a salary from an NGO, when you then want to do your local transactions, it will be translated to the local currency. You do not necessarily have the freedom to take out your hard cash unless there are reasons which would be much to do with travel, either business or leisure, with other requirements that will follow suit with such kind of requests within your bank. Now, such kind of a control, I would suggest, also would bring in a higher premium in terms of the parallel market. We're yet to see how some of these directives that have been given by the RBZ are yet to play out, as they have not really written it out in plain English, but it may not be their best language at the current moment, because they would not want to cause much panic in the public, much to do with the realization of how they are causing for less freedom as to you getting your US dollar hard cash. Now, it seems as if it's going to be a situation where you can see your US dollars, but you can't necessarily touch them. From the Equity Access team and I, do not forget to like, follow, and subscribe our Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube accounts at Equity Access, and do visit our website www.equityaccess.net. Good evening.
Climbing to the top takes more than just hard work and smart choices. It's the passion that drives you from within, the endurance to keep going through difficult times, and having a very clear vision of how to succeed. That's what we strive for at CBZ. We're a diversified and innovative listed financial services group in Zimbabwe, with a complete range of activities, including banking, short and long-term insurance, asset management, and property investments. CBZ has been a pinnacle for stability in the economic landscape of Zimbabwe, stemming from our deep-rooted values, our excellent customer service delivery, and our corporate vision to strive for excellence as a global competitor. Our continuous investment in research and development will cement our promise to provide customer convenience utilizing state-of-the-art technology. Relationships are at the core of what we do. We understand, however, that strong, long-lasting partnerships are not built overnight. With over 3 decades of wealth management, we have come to understand our clients and their specific investment requirements. Our unique mix of skills ensures that investment opportunities are examined from all perspectives. The balancing rocks of Zimbabwe have weathered the elements for thousands of years and stood the test of time, like majestic reminders of the fine balance of nature. They challenge our perception of what is possible and what endures. Just as CBZ has weathered the economic storms and remained steadfast throughout the turbulence of unsettled economies. Achieving the impossible through resilience and stability, we balance the elements of hard work, dedication and experience, making us your ideal partner for success.